A surprising turn of events, dozens of countries joining Israel in a boycott against the UN's controversial Durban summit, the conference on combating racism, ironically mired with a history of anti-Semitism. But things didn't exactly go as the boycotters expected. Durban 4, held on the 20th anniversary of the first anti-racism conference, was a fairly empty affair at the UN on Wednesday. 34 nations co-signing onto an Israeli-led boycott of the event over its repeated history of delving into openly anti-Semitic rhetoric. United States Ambassador to the UN, Linda Thomas-Greenfield, for one, saying that the United States is committed to working on the issue of racism, but will do so in a more, quote, inclusive setting, adding that Washington still holds concerns over the summit's results and faults the anti-Israel and anti-Semitic underpinnings of the Durban process. All that said, much to the surprise of many, reports show that Israel was not even mentioned at this year's event. Rather, discussions shifting as they should to racial or religious discrimination, intolerance, and xenophobia in general, and issues like COVID vaccine disparities and recognition and reparations for injustices caused by slavery in particular. Criticism of Israel, meantime, instead patiently held for the UN General Assembly, and most comments focusing on the Israel-Palestinian conflict through arguments in favor of a negotiated two-state solution. Leaders from the United States, Egypt, Jordan, and Saudi Arabia among the many calling for a return to talks, but others a little bit more radical. Iranian President Raisi accusing Israel of slaughtering women and children and of being the biggest sponsor of state terrorism. And Qatar, while on the one hand urging the world not to shun the Taliban, on the other hand, similarly accusing Jerusalem of numerous alleged human rights violations, including starting the May conflict between Israel and Hamas with repeated abuses of Muslim and Christian religious sites. Such accusations, however, are often levied at Israel without merit. The war in May of last year in particular being sparked by Hamas terrorists who indiscriminately fired over 4,000 missiles towards civilian communities in Israel, starting with the Old City in Jerusalem. And this escalation itself, while typically blamed on Israeli presence at the Temple Mount, in actuality started weeks before, with the collapse of Palestinian elections and a sharp rise in attacks against Jews, later dubbed the TikTok Intifada.